Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Nadine Robinson. A practicing midwife for 20 years, Nadine has gathered expansive knowledge of herbology, breathwork, firewalking, and sexuality. She is the embodied wild woman. In this episode, we talk about how burnout was actually causing her perimenopausal symptoms and what she did to overcome them. We talk a lot about sex, how women's number one sexual need is to feel desired, how she loves the peri to post-menopause phase because it is life saying, stop messing around, how women change the world, and perhaps most importantly, how everything comes back to sex. With perhaps a bed, or maybe even a beach in mind, I would like to mention our sponsor, Cozy Earth. Their bedding and towels are cool, super soft and moisture wicking, designed to keep you comfortable whatever you get up to. Go to cozyearth.com and use code MENOPAUSE for 35% off. Nadine, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for joining me. I would love to hear all about you. So if you are happy to start with telling everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, where you come from, then fire away.
Hi, Hattie. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. Yeah, so I'm Nadine. I was a midwife for 20 years, and I came to midwifery really early in my life. I attended my first birth that wasn't my own when I was 19. And then I was like, what is this? So I really got hooked. I loved women's health. I loved the holistic nature of it. I love the empowerment part for women. This is about women. This isn't about the system. This isn't about, what somebody else wants to do. So it was a really fascinating journey. I have 4 daughters. And so, and that's been a journey as well. I had my first baby at 17, dropped out of high school. So no education, no schooling, so lots of cool places there as well that helped inform my practice, about single moms, about young moms, about, those kind of things. So yeah, so I'm married now. I have a beautiful husband. We've been together for almost 20 years. And, I burnt out of midwifery. Midwifery is such a hard job. It's filled with on call and the stress of, every time you get a page, you're thinking you're going to a birth. You don't know how long you'll be there. And, 9 times out of 10, they're perfect. And every once in a while, you're a little scared and you're like, ooh, do I have what it takes to manage and walk this path with women? But so I burnt out of midwifery and I got really, really sick. I was deeply, deeply sick. And I was having gastrointestinal issues. I was down to 120 pounds. I was very sick. And I thought, what the heck am I going to do? Midwifery and catching babies is not a transferable option. Like, I don't have a lot of other skills. I've dedicated my entire life. And then I realized, I had all these other sort of softer type of counseling skills, holistic health, tons of work around relationships. And of course, my entire career was teaching people about sex and their bodies. So I'm like, well, I think I might have some other things to do. So yeah.
So where did you go from there? Where are you based for everybody who doesn't know yet?
Well, I'm in Canada and I live in Calgary, which is close to Banff. Everybody knows where Banff is, it seems to be, if you know about Canada. So we're about an hour outside of the mountains. So it's beautiful where I live, cold, snowy, but we get beautiful summers. So that's where I live. And what happened is I just kind of started doing more of I would call it a healing practice. And was doing the healing. I developed my own 2-year healing program. So I spent a number of years teaching other people my healing modalities that I had sort of accumulated over the period of my career. And then I kind of realized I kept getting people telling me how much they loved when I was talking about sex. And I was like, I don't want to talk about sex because I don't want to get into the boobs. I'm not into the tantric stuff. And then I realized that's my strength. Is I want to talk to people about their sexuality and sex as a pathway through their spirituality, right? And so that's the work I do now.
I'm very much looking forward to coming back to that in all its glorious detail. I need to sidebar you just for a moment and ask about your experience of perimenopause or menopause and whereabouts are you at the moment?
Right. So I'm 49 years old. And it's interesting because I first started noticing perimenopausal symptoms when I was burning out as a midwife. So I was in my late 30s and I started having horrific night sweats and brain fog and hormonal shifts all over the place. And my periods were crazy. And I thought, this isn't my experience of my body. When women talk about, soaking the bed, like you actually need to change the sheets, it was like, what is happening? And I was young, right? I was young. And so I thought, okay, I'm young for this, but that's okay. And so I realized at that time, I thought, oh, I'm actually really sick. This isn't actually because my body isn't working properly. My body's working as best it can, but I'm so unwell, in body and mind and spirit. I was deeply, deeply, deeply not well. And so when I dealt with the physical symptoms, not of perimenopause, but of the other symptoms I was having and was able to kind of heal and grieve from what I'd been experiencing as a midwife, that took me about 2 years. Guess what? All my symptoms went away.
Wow, that's remarkable.
I didn't have to do a thing. And of course, as a midwife, your philosophy is, in birth, if you look at how medical people approach birth, the joke is you can read the studies and in all the medical textbooks, which of course I had to read as part of my training. They always say that you only diagnose a normal birth retrospectively. And what that means is that you don't say birth is normal until the mom's delivered and the baby's born and everybody's healthy. Whereas midwifery, we look at women's bodies very differently. You're normal, you're designed to work, it's going to be perfect. And you have to prove that you're going to go outside of normal. And so I realized that was such a good lesson for me in going through perimenopause, because I thought, oh, okay, so we already have made women's bodies pathological instead of recognizing the normalcy of going through these changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, at 49, I have zero perimenopause symptoms. Zero.
That's fantastic. You didn't need to do anything at all.
Well, I did, but this is what we don't like to talk about, right? I needed to change my life. As a midwife in Canada, we make a lot of money. So I loved how much money I was making. I was addicted to the money. I also, felt a lot of pride and, also even say perhaps ego that I had dedicated 20 years. I was a well-known, well-loved midwife. I had, privileges at 5 hospitals. Midwifery is a beautiful calling, something that I loved so much I needed to give up. The pride, the honor, the money, the idea that I was giving up 20 years of a career. And now what? I needed to clean up my emotional and mental landscape, right? That's what I had to do. My body was just going to be like, we got this. We're designed, our bodies are designed clinically. We know this for homeostasis and for wellness and health.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? We eat fast food and we watch Netflix too long and we do things that we know aren't good for us. And then the body breaks down.
And stress management is the number one foundation for smooth running, supposedly, through perimenopause, or at least to ease any symptoms that somebody has. And I think an awful lot of us find that it's a stressful time of life, and finding the space to address that stress is often quite a challenge, but you did it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, where there's tons of studies, right? That's a beautiful awareness to bring in, because 80 to 90% of all disease is caused by stress. We know this. This isn't me. And people call me woo-woo, right? I'm not woo-woo. I just know that actually your mental and emotional health is primarily the driver to the physical. And we don't want to talk about that because it's hard. It's way easier to just think, oh, I'm just going to walk for 20 minutes and I can still eat really junk food and have a terrible relationship and have a boss that's mean to me all the time. No, you can't.
So what did you do to change your path from midwifery to where you are now?
Mostly, I started taking some more sort of complementary healing classes. I mean, I was already a herbologist. I'm trained in homeopathy. I'm trained in essential oils and aromatherapy. I was trained in acupressure. So I had all these sort of other pieces, but they were specifically to pregnancy and childbirth. And so I decided to kind of dive into those a little bit more and just kind of scoop them together in a little bit of a nicer pile, right? So instead of the focus being midwifery and catching a baby, I scooped all those beautiful teachings, the trainings, the experience I had together and just created my own healing modality where I was doing some energy healing, a bit of coaching, talking to people about their mental health. It's a huge part of what I do. I'm not a counselor, because if you need a counselor, I'll send you to one, right?
Right.
But giving people that sort of holistic treatment that I gave them. And I just started to thrive. My practice was busy. I had, people were like, I love this, because it's the missing link, right? Is that holistic approach to, you're not just your blood pressure or you're not depression. These are labels that we give, but they're not really helpful, because that's not who we are, right?
What do you see most often in the women that come to you?
It's so funny that you asked me that, because really, I think that was part of the calling that I've been resisting for so long, because every single thing lands back at sex. There is a root, and I don't just mean the act of sex, our sexuality, the way our bodies work, the way we feel about our bodies, our experience of birth, our experience of infertility, our experience of our first PAP. There's so much there for women. And it didn't matter. Someone could come to me and say, oh, I'm really depressed and I'm working out for a long time and I want to holistically, and yeah, I'm seeing my psychologist, and yes, I'm on medication and I'm working with my doc, but I want to work with you. And 9 times out of 10, we'd end up somewhere. There was a sexual trespass, there was sexual abuse. I mean, these are the kind of, we all know this is normal for women. It's the unspoken. We all have the little look at each other. We're like, yeah, we know. So that became such a thread, and I realized it was an excluded thread. A lot of people weren't equipped to talk about that, but I am. So that's where we go.
An awful lot of people aren't equipped to talk about it, partly because it's still a taboo, partly cultural backgrounds don't allow that kind of conversation. And I feel there's an awful lot of shame often wrapped around it, whether it is past abuse or an event or how you feel about yourself and your body. How do you go about addressing all of these issues?
Well, that's actually the easy part, because when people work with me, there's one expert in the room, and it's not me, it's you. So I'm just a really good listener, and I ask good questions. And based on my experience of women's holistic health, mental health, relationships, how the body works, sexuality, navigating the medical system, it's easy. People are like sitting there and they're like, I've like worked with people for 10 years and I've never gotten this. And I'm like, I know, but that's part of my background as a midwife. And we always treated our clients holistically. We always treated them as sovereign. And so it's easy when you have that as a default. You're like, you have all the answers. Tell me the stories. And I have a pad of paper. I go through these, by a mile a minute, and I write down notes. And then I ask sort of some leading questions to dive into the spaces and help people put the puzzle together. I never know what's going to show up in any of my sessions, and I'm fine with that. I'm like, you can come in and we can be out of left field. And I'm like, great, bring this, because people know. People have the stories, they have the wisdom, they have the lived experience. What the family rules were, So you bring that in, and I'll just help you put it together in a way that's meaningful for you, so you can actually have meaningful, profound change.
So profound and so deep for so many women, particularly at this time of life, because one of the conversations that comes up time and time again is zero libido, not even just low libido. And there's a disconnect between the sense of self and the physical sense of self. Often there's a lack of feeling attractive or feeling desperately lackluster and a bit of a shadow of your former self. These are things that seem to be on repeat. Is there anything that you would suggest that would work for most?
Yes. I love your question. I love it. So for most women, I feel like energetically and emotionally or spiritually, and again, spiritually doesn't mean anything to me other than why do you get up in the morning and what gives your life meaning? That's up to you. But to me, I always think whatever the symptom that's showing up for women, the answer lies in how are you being betrayed in that space? And that's what happens to women. We know that we're fat, old, and ugly. And if that's actually how you're being treated in your relationship, how are you going to be feeling sexy? And so this isn't a simple and straightforward issue. I mean, there can be some clinical pieces and pictures that need to be included. Sometimes there's some actual functionality realities that people need help with, dry vaginas, these kind of things. I mean, this is in the field. But the truth is that every woman who I've met who has told me they've had a libido issue, in this phase of their life because they weren't having satisfying sex. They didn't feel loved and desired. What do we know by the research? Most women's number one sexual need is to feel desired. But if we're just Googling the 20-year-old swimsuit model with a perfect body, and I use that term really loosely, we know that we're ugly and not desirable. And so that's a really simple, it sounds like a simple solution, but it's deeply complex and individual for each of us. But I'm telling you, why would you want to have sex if you felt ugly and you're worried about your floppy boobs falling in your pits? Right? No one wants to be vulnerable like that. Are you having good orgasms? Are you having orgasms every time? Who's focusing on pleasure? Whose pleasure takes priority? What does pleasure mean to you? I mean, these are the kind of questions that you want to go in with women. And they already have the answers, I'm telling you. And so, and if a woman says, no, we were having great sex and I was having good orgasms, then I would go into some of the body image issues. And sadly, this is often the time in our lives because we're done with children. Children are raised and we're secure in our careers. So guess what's showing up here? Oftentimes memories of abuse.
Right.
Yeah. Which can never be underplayed. And it could be that your grandpa looked at your boobs through your t-shirt, and that's enough. We don't need to go into some horrific story. There can be a history of sexual trespass that we were told to minimize, or perhaps was normal, and we realized that actually deeply harmed us.
It is such a mental game for women, sex. Not to say that it isn't for men, but for women, it is as much as it is the physical. So if you've got some kind of block, even if you can't recognize it, then yep, that is clearly the place to begin. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it becomes less work when we make it okay, and we don't, because women will often come in and say to me, oh, well, I was never raped. And I'm like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. You could have been whistled at while you were walking down the street and felt really unsafe. And that can be enough.
And that shows up this late in life, even if you've been fine up until this time?
1,000%. The reason I love perimenopause and menopause is because your life is saying to you, stop messing around. We are no longer allowed to compromise. And what do women do? We put everyone else first all the time. Growing up, we know we have to center the needs of our brothers or our dads, right? Then there's the teachers, and then you got to be nice to get along. So women are constantly told to put others' needs first. And then we're rewarded, right? You're such a great mom. You're such a great teacher. You're such a great nurse. We reward women for their sacrifice. And that's what makes a virtuous woman. And so when we hit perimenopause and menopause, that's life's way of saying to you, stop messing around. You have no more time. This is it. You're on the other side. You're on the short half of your life. This is what I always tell myself, right? I'm on the short half of my life at 49. What are you going to do about that, right? And again, this is often when women really have the time to just look at themselves. They have the time, the money, and the permission.
Where should they start? If they're listening to you now, obviously book to see you, or even better, pack a bag, come and visit. But where should they start if they're just sitting at home listening or going for a walk listening?
The easiest place for them to start. Do not, I beg people, do not go into your deepest, darkest wound and start unpacking there. You are not required to dive deep. If you think, what would make me feel better is I think if I just walked 10 minutes every day, just do that. That's good enough. Because again, what's the other theme of women? Not good enough, right? So that we start easy. We look for wins, that we can start at that nice light, I want to get better sleep. Okay, I'm not going to drink alcohol. Maybe that's one solution for you. Maybe it's you stop drinking coffee or tea after noon. It doesn't matter what it is. You already know something that's wiggling in your mind and saying to you, I think I might need to shift something here. So we don't make ourselves wrong. We don't make ourselves bad. We just say, hey, let's have a quick little thing here. This is a real quick, easy win. I'm just going to start there. That's the easiest way to start to shift and heal.
Find the wins. Go for them, small, and accept that they are a win. Because again, I think a common theme is very much that, so I went for a walk for 5 minutes, big deal, that's not a win.
Yeah. I always tell people the whole purpose of my actual work, if you want to get right down to the nuts and bolts, is to help people not believe they're wrong, That's it. That's it. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Writing notes, not wrong. What else would you like to talk about in terms of sex, given that you are rebranding and it's all about sex?
Everything's about sex. Well, like I say, I've really struggled and I resisted this for a long time because this isn't tantric sex coaching. It's not couples coaching. It's really about using our sexuality as a pathway to get into sort of our spirituality, our soul wounds. You want to talk about shame? It's all living there in sex. You want to talk about how somebody feels about their body? Sex. People's experience of their sexuality tells you exactly where there are places that there's wounding or harm. And so it's been a really fun thing, because I think when I start to explain it to people, they're like, they can start to see those connections, right? If you look at, somebody like Jeff Bezos, he hoards money, right? That's a sexual wounding, right? He's got this idea what an alpha male needs to look like. And I don't mean his sexuality, I just mean about the rules about being a good man. You got to be rich. You got to have a young gal on your arm, and the more money, the better, right? This is a wounding, right? And how would our world be different if we weren't doing that? This is where sexting comes from. It's where affairs come from. We're constantly trying to meet that need because when our sexual needs are met, we actually feel deeply, deeply seen and deeply, deeply nourished and cherished. And most of us are running around trying to feel that all the time, whether it's with our friendships or we're on social media or we're working out because we want to look better. These are always these outward needs, because we want to be accepted and loved and seen and valued. And sex is the easiest way to do that. But boy, it's the hardest, isn't it?
Just listening to you saying seen, nourished and cherished, I feel that for most people, yes, it is. It's look at me, or the 20-year-old me that had a neat figure and was pretty and young, and feeling nourished and cherished is really vital to that connection as well. Again, not just the sex with a partner, but the connection with friendships or acquaintances even, just to be acknowledged, I suppose.
Deeply. And it's funny because we talk about connection as if it's flippant, when in fact, it's one of the basic human needs we have, right? I just read a study the other day because I love the research. And so I read a study the other day that one of the primary causes of dementia is loneliness.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at the way we all ran to Zoom in lockdown as well. Any form of connection, not the same, obviously, as being face-to-face in person, but anything we could get to nourish that part of us.
Yeah. Yes. When you can start to talk to people about this, and when people are entering these spaces with me, I love it because there isn't anywhere else for them to have this conversation. Mm-hmm. And of course, if we're having sex with a partner or a lover and we're sharing our bodies that way and we're having that kind of intimacy, that's one of the most powerful places for us to sort of do that work, because you and I are going to misunderstand each other, and our friends are going to misunderstand us, and the person that we're ordering our coffee from is going to, or you're going to cut somebody off when you're driving and you're going to be like, but maybe that person just found out their child was in a car accident and they're in the hospital. I mean, we don't give each other that space, so we're not seen. Mm-hmm. And so that when we can give people that opportunity to deeply be seen and connected, it changes everything about how they move in the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Good sex will heal the world. I mean, this is my, it starts wars. It's why people have affairs. It's why they cheat. They're going to strip clubs. I mean, that's why pornography exists, because people have this idea that they can't get their sexual needs met. So they're constantly looking, and it causes great harm. Mm-hmm.
Is there a suggestion that you could give to a woman who might have no libido and want to reconnect with her partner?
If that's something that's important to you, I would just start with going back to remembering about desire. And when you remember about desire, it has to be two ways. It can't be one. You have to remember the desire from a place of sexuality, definitely. So think about that, what really turned me on, or what made me feel sexy? What were the things that were happening? What was that hottest? It might not even have been with your partner. Maybe there was this hottest, sexiest sex of your life. And you're like, okay, but I need to harness those feelings and bring them in here. So you need to think about desire. and deeply think about desire, because we're so ashamed. I'd like lighter touch. That can feel shameful. Or, I'd like to use some toys while we're having sex. I'm a creep, So really be vulnerable there. And that takes a lot of work to be vulnerable, first with yourself, to admit what you deeply desire sexually, and then to be able to communicate it in a way that's going to be received by your lover. So that's the first place, is to play with your desire. And I know it's not here and now, but you have to go back. You have to go back to a time when you felt that desire. That's number one. But the second piece of this work, and this is what people, I think, really get mixed up on, especially women, it can't just be desire sexually. What do you desire in the rest of your life? What lights you up? What sets you on fire? What are you passionate about? Is it a social justice cause? Is it climate change? Is it pets? You love your dog. Great. Yes. I mean, it can be something so simple, but we forget we can leverage that outward desire that lives out here in the world. And that's what all that sexual energy is, right? It's life force energy. Mm-hmm. So when you tap into that desire that lights you up, what are you excited about? Your grandkids? Great. How can you make their life better? Maybe you want to take your grandkids every day. That's deeply connecting to you. Doesn't matter. But you leverage that energy, you leverage the passion, and that helps you bring it back into the sexuality and into your bedroom.
This ties in so beautifully with the idea of second spring, or you're designing your own part two, or reclaiming your life and your desire and really genuinely working out what you want from life.
Yeah. Well, and think about it too, back to what I said before too. This is the other thing about, what if it's okay? What if we make it not wrong that you don't want to have sex right now? Right? Like, we're back to that whole, this is my life's work. You're not wrong. It's okay to not want to have sex. Ooh, women aren't allowed to do that though, right? Because women exist for men's sexual pleasure. Mm-hmm. This is the narrative.
Well, maybe not.
This is what we're changing. This is what, and women of this age who are in perimenopause and menopausal women, I mean, we are the most powerful women in the world. We're smart. We have money. We are incredibly educated. We've got the privilege of all of the great social justice work that's been happening around us, the work in climate change. I mean, that's why people are scared of us. That's why people don't like old women. I'm going to call it that loosely, but it's because we've got the mojo, and women change the world.
And when we get together, then things happen. There was a lovely piece in the paper, it's all over Instagram, or certainly in my menopause little bubble, about a group of very powerful, very influential women over here who are changing the face of menopause in Parliament and hopefully throughout the country. And the intention is throughout the world. So very, very exciting, wonderful, again, intelligent, accomplished, interesting, fascinating, clever women, beautiful as well, all of them, every single one. And they get together and they are making big change. How is that happening over in Canada?
Well, I'm not a good person to ask. And I'll be honest about that, because I've always ran in these weird groups. I was a midwife. We were doing home births underwater. I mean, I just thought that was normal. And then people would be like, wait, you're a what? And I'd be like, oh, right. That's not normal for most people. I've sort of done a little bit, maybe what you're doing, your menopause bubble. I'm in that too, where, I'm surrounded by powerful women. I'm surrounded by women who are, talking about this and making changes. They're talking about it in their workplaces, whether they're in the C-suite but it might be a bubble. So this is important to say, it might be, I'm living in my little dream world, when in reality, and I think that's probably a big part of it, is that women we're expected to function like men.
Yeah.
And so we need to shift that narrative into the power of living within cycles, because that's how women live their lives. And that's how nature grows. We've got winter, we've got spring, we've got summer, we've got fall when we harvest. The society has a lot to learn from cyclical living and the power of that. And that's why we need women in leadership positions who are willing to lead as women, not lead as men.
I love that. That's another thing that's come up actually repeatedly this week and over the last couple of weeks, is living as though you don't have children when you do, and working as though you don't have children when you do, and then having children as though you don't work when you do. Women have to deny half of themselves at different points in the day or the week. And take on different roles and behave as though, like you just said, as though they were men often.
For women to have it all, they have to do it all.
Yeah.
That's true, right? So, no, you're exactly right, and that's a huge part of, I created a course that I'm sharing in a little bit, but it's exactly about this. It's about embodied leadership for women, because we can't lead men's way. And women shy away from leadership positions because we're punished, because we can't do leadership the way you just described it, because that's what's expected of us. And we need those stay-at-home moms taking leadership roles, not the way we've defined traditionally leadership, right? A patriarchal leadership, even white, very, very white model, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nadine, is there anything that you would like to wrap up with?
There is one thing that I really would like all women to know and feel, and even just allow themselves to think could be true for them, that your body is never, ever broken. Yeah. It's, our body has been pathologized. It starts when we get our period, and then we have acne. So then we need to go on oral birth control pills, and, then we're not going to be able to get pregnant. And then when we do, you're going to need lots of intervention. Our bodies have been made to feel as if they're constantly a disaster, a walking disaster waiting to happen, and it needs constant intervention. There is nothing wrong with taking a medication, having a surgery. I'm a hot yes for that. I'm a hot yes. And your body is beautiful and normal and absolutely is designed to work perfectly, including through perimenopause and menopause. We are not meant to suffer. We are not meant to suffer.
Beautiful words. Thank you. Where can people find you?
My new website is launching, so it's www.nadinerobinson.com. I'm on Instagram as I am Nadine Robinson. Those are the two best places to track me down. You can follow me there and, just see if there's anything fun. I always say, do you want to play? So, just check in and see what lands for you, right? Thank you. I just really, I love talking about this stuff. So just thank you for that. And women deserve to feel good.
Well, thank you again. And thank you for being so open and having so much to contribute.
Thank you. Take good care.
Check out Nadine's website, nadinerobinson.com, and find her on Instagram, I am Nadine Robinson. A huge thank you to our sponsor, Cozy Earth, creators of luxury bed linen, nightwear and loungewear. Their bed linens are softer than cotton, made from sustainably sourced materials and temperature regulated to help keep you cool at night. They've even given us a fabulous 35% discount on all bedding, toweling and clothing. Go to cozyearth.com and use code MENOPAUSE. Please remember to follow us on the podcast apps and share the podcast with everybody you know so that we can keep it going and spread the word. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.